Well, this is Mr. Montgomery. I met him a few weeks ago in New York.
Oh, how are you? You live here?
Yes.
Well, maybe you know what a zombie is.
When a person dies and is buried, it seems there are certain voodoo priests who have the power to bring him back to life.
How horrible.
It's worse than horrible because a zombie has no will of his own. You see them sometimes walking around blindly with dead eyes, following orders, not knowing what they do, not caring.
You mean like Democrats?
Well, hello, kiddies. It's your friendly neighborhood watchman here with you today to talk about a possible sequel to that zombie apocalyptic film franchise. Although, can you call it a franchise or two movies? Two films have been made 28 days later and 28 weeks later. And the last one was released way back in May of 2007. That's 17 years later, if you do the math. 28 Days Later was one of my favorite films in the zombie genre. Now, not to be too pedantic about it, or splitting hairs, technically, at least to me anyway, it's not really a zombie film. So instead of zombies, they're infected. They're infected with a pathogen that makes them extremely violent and homicidal. Because unlike in a true zombie film, the people do not die and then become reanimated. That being said, there's been some great films in that subgenre. One of the early infectious type of zombie films was George Romero's The Crazies. Now, I watched The Crazies, the remake from 2010.
We're in trouble.
Is he dead?
And it was alright. It was good for what it was. I watched it in the theaters when it came out, and I had no idea at the time that it was a remake. I don't think I watched the original before the remake. It's been so long, though. I do know that it was because of the remake that I found out about the original. And I did watch it. I like the remake better. But geez, it's almost 14 years ago now. That Crazies remake starred Timothy Olyphant and Radha Mitchell. Nevertheless, 28 Days Later was a great horror film, in my opinion. It was at times brutal and intense, and featured some actors that will become some of my favorites, like Brendan Gleeson. The sequel, 28 Weeks Later, how can I put this politely? I did not enjoy nearly as much. There were a lot of head-scratching choices made by the characters in that film, to put it mildly, and I'm guessing that was the popular consensus among moviegoers because I'm sure the sequel didn't do as well as the first movie, and that's why it's been 17 years since the third film of this trilogy is, I am assuming, going to be made. Are people really craving this? And I'm afraid, like with Zombieland, whose sequel left a lot to be desired. Well, it was such a letdown. They waited too long to do it, and I understand why. The actors, besides Woody Harrelson, the other young actors, they blew up, they got popular, and it was difficult getting them all to agree to do a sequel. Nevertheless, one was made, and it was just disappointing, in my opinion. It was a letdown. I hope for the best. I hope it's more like the first one than the second one, to state the obvious. Yeah, the 2000 was the decade of the zombie. Along with 28 Days Later,
Resident Evil,
starring Mila Jovovich in the first of what will become a successful franchise spanning over 14 years, from 2002 to 2016. Was also released in 2002. A comic book titled The Walking Dead, created by writer Robert Kirkman, would make its debut a year later in October of 2003. In 2004, George Romero's Dawn of the Dead remake by Zack Snyder will hit the theaters and become my favorite zombie film. On Halloween of 2010, Robert Kirkman's aforementioned comic book, published by Image Comics, was made into a successful and wildly popular TV show, especially its earlier seasons, and will span 12 years, concluding in November of 2022. Although the Walking Dead universe continues with numerous spin-offs, one being The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon, starring fan favorite Norman Reedus, and Dead City, starring Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Negan and Lauren Cohen as Maggie Green. AMC's latest TWD spin-off, entitled The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, and just premiered this past Sunday, the 25th of February, starring Andrew Lincoln reprising his role as Rick Grimes, and Michonne, played by Danai Gurira. The zombie craze, although waning, continued well after 2010, with movies and TV shows still being produced, such as World War Z, starring Brad Pitt, based on a book by author Max Brooks, was released in 2013, along with Warm Bodies, a horror/romantic comedy, rom-com if you prefer, was also released in the same year. And Sci-Fi got into the act with their own zombie series, Z Nation, which ran for 5 seasons and premiered on September 12th of 2014. Another zombie show was also adapted from a comic book called iZombie, which premiered in 2015 and also ran for 5 seasons. Shaun of the Dead was also released in 2004. That was a horror comedy, a fan favorite, because Shaun of the Dead starred Simon Pegg and his buddy Ed, played by Nick Frost. And in a similar vein, followed Zombieland. In 2009, Zombieland was released, which I enjoyed. And let us not forget Maggie, starring Abigail Breslin from Zombieland, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, in a surprising role in a poignant movie which takes place in a world that had an outbreak of a zombie virus. It's not your typical action type of zombie movie like Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. It's a drama set in a world where zombies exist. And that's all I'll say about that, in case anybody hasn't watched it and would like to. So most folks pretty much OD on the zombie journey. Only die-hard zombie fans couldn't get enough of it. Can't have too much of it. The Walking Dead spin-offs are still going. And 28 Days Later is coming out again. At least 2 of them.
And who knows? That might kick off another zombie craze. 2002, when 28 Days Later was released, was almost 22 years ago.
Some people weren't even born when a lot of these films came out. Makes a guy feel old.
But with that said, folks, let's jump into this article from Bounding Into Comics, with the byline by J.B. Augustine, with the heading, Oppenheimer star Cillian Murphy joins Danny Boyle and Alex Garland for a sequel to 28 Years Later. He was good in Oppenheimer, by the way, for my taste. Cillian Murphy is set to go from Oscar contention to Christopher Nolan's lauded biopic, Oppenheimer, and wend his way back to the series that got his career going in the first place. A third installment of the zombie plague series, 28 Days Later, is on the way to complete the trilogy, though that won't be all. The Hollywood Reporter says Murphy will be back to executive produce and maybe more, but he is not coming alone. Fellow franchise starters Danny Boyle, who directed the 2002 original, and Alex Garland, penner of the script, will join the Scarecrow actor to kickstart the outbreak all over again. Boyle is going to direct 28 Years Later from a script by Garland. That's good news for fans of the first film, like myself, with another new installment after that in the offing. Garland is writing that one too, but Boyle is reportedly letting somebody new handle directing duties. With films such as Ex Machina, Annihilation, and the upcoming Civil War under his belt, Garland could fill that vacant seat, but we're only speculating. Here's a still from the first film with the caption, "The chimp that causes the outbreak of rage in 28 Days Later." The announcement of the sequel, almost as many years in the making as its title suggests, no kidding, comes with an additional wrinkle, a venue change. 28 Days Later and its sequel, 28 Weeks Later, were Fox Studio productions. But according to the Hollywood Reporter, Boyle and Garland picked up sticks to move house over to Sony for this one. Well, Fox Studios was bought out by Walt Disney, since the last film 28 weeks later was produced, when the agency WME let the word out among the studios of the project's gestation, a bidding war ensued that came down to Sony Pictures and Warner Brothers. The idea of having the original creators return to lead a sequel or two had some comparing it to George Miller returning to Mad Max with 2015's Fury Road, says The Hollywood Reporter. Well, hopefully, 28 years later has as successful a resurgence as did Fury Road. It's said that the new film and its sequel will likely have a mid-range budget of $60 million. A theatrical release is possible, but not locked in yet. Murphy appearing in front of the camera to mark the occasion is likewise up in the air, although it seems to be a likelihood. The actor remarked back in December he is, quote, available when discussing 28 Days Later at the Screen Actors Guild After Us Foundation's conversations. He also revealed he didn't know he was making a zombie movie at the time. Well, Infected. I wasn't too aware we were making a zombie movie, to be honest with you, Murphy noted via Vanity Fair. It was right around the time SARS happened, and there was all this air rage stuff going on. So I never felt it was a zombie film, because it wasn't. And I'm glad I didn't watch the Romero movies, because I didn't realize how hollow those movies were.
The killers are eating the flesh of the people they murdered.
Yeah, they're dead. They're all messed up.
Well, horror fans, we shall see. Let's jump on in to the reader's comments, as we are wont to do. We start quickly with our first poster, Knuckles. The writing for 28 Weeks Later was flat out rage-inducing. That movie left me fuming with how stupid everyone in that story was. The first movie was pretty good. It should have been a one and done. Pat Grace C replies, exactly. And Bunny with a Keyboard is here to opine, and if Hollywood keeps churning out rehashes as it does, eventually we'll have 28 sequels later. Oh, Bunny, you cad. KT replies, so I guess we're skipping over 28 months later, huh? Yeah, we have. That diseased ship sailed a long time ago. Last but not least, we have Dual Lips Hot. That's how I want to call you. Dual Lips Hot. Comments. It's been what, 15 years? No, dude. The math's wrong. 17. Is anyone really screaming for this? Not really, but hopefully it's a good one, horror fans. If the same writer, Garland, is doing it, and director Boyle and Cillian Murphy's in it, hopefully like the aforementioned Mad Max Fury Road, it will have a resurrection. No pun intended. Or was there?
What you talking about?
Well, folks, that's it for this video. If you liked it and you're a fan of the first movie and the second movie, I won't judge you. What are your thoughts on this? If you wish to share, please do so and comment. Hit that like button if you'd like to see these two possible sequels that I mentioned in the article. If you don't want to see it, then smash that like button. Double tap it and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And hit that notification bell so that you always be forewarned whenever a zombie apocalypse is about to drop. And as always, stay safe, and I bid you peace.
The dead have a way of coming back, you know.
Get out. When they're dead, they're dead.
Not Aunt Lucy. She was a Republican.